Good.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to our session on optimizing team development and success with Damon Clark, our friend and partner on all things related to talent optimization. Hi, Damon. How's it going?
It's Friday and it's sunny, so all is good.
All good. All good. Here too. Damon is in Boston. I'm in the Bay Area. And just some quick background on Damon. Damon is the founder and head honcho at Talent Optimizers, a consultancy based outside of Boston that's focused on using behavioral data to provide insights and action on all things related to talent retention, talent development, and aligning teams with strategy. As you can hear, Damon is originally from the UK and has led cross-functional teams for a number of multinational companies in the UK and Italy, the UAE, and the US. He's also spent some time at HubSpot and at Predictive Index, which is where we originally connected with Damon 5 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Predictive Index, or PI, it is a leading behavioral assessment company of which we at YOL are a certified partner, and use its tool in many of our team focus programs, offsites, onsites, leadership intensives, as a way to get teams to better understand each other's styles and work more effectively together. And Damon will talk a little bit more about PI in the coming 45 minutes or so. And anyway, what we thought we'd do is I'm going to ask Damon some questions about talent optimization and development, and then he will take us through a typical team assimilation session, and then we will open it up for questions. So without further ado, Damon, can you start by telling us a little bit more about talent optimization and how it differs from traditional team development approaches?
Yeah, sure. So team development is probably a part of talent optimization. So when we think of talent optimization, other words can be used are people strategy. And a little bit of background on that. Traditionally, HR was built to mitigate risk from factories back in the day. And now as HR is involved, they have a remit across all types of functions. And if we think about business problems, they're usually people problems, and they end up with HR. So talent optimization or people strategy is the strategic approach to managing talent. So that could be performance management, employee engagement, organizational development, leadership development. So it's all things kind of people related, and building a strategy behind that. And included in that is talent development and leadership development.
Got it. Got it. And when you say talent optimization, what are you describing?
It's the alignment of your talent to execute business strategy.
Got it.
So think of it as two sides of a coin. You have your goals and your business strategy, and developing a talent strategy will support your people to execute that strategy and achieve those goals.
And how can organizations take a more proactive and strategic approach to talent management to ensure better return on investment and greater engagement and retention and so forth?
So for us, we always start with data. So actually, let me begin with thinking about where it goes wrong sometimes. So when we're thinking about team development, it's often an afterthought. So, there's a leadership meeting, there's an offsite coming up, and, a 2-day strategy offsite, and someone says, oh, we should do some developments. Can someone book something? So it becomes like a corridor conversation, and suddenly Barbara or Brian is like, oh, I did some psychological safety at my last company. We should do that. I know the provider. And that's not how we should tackle talent development. We should be a bit more strategic. We should use data to know where to focus. We should use data to prioritize. And it should fit into that wider talent optimization plan, thinking about your whole organization as a whole, that engagement and retention. So, to backtrack on that question, it's like starting with the data and being a bit more strategic.
Got it. Got it. Speaking of data, what are some key metrics or indicators that companies should track to assess the effectiveness of their talent management strategies?
So there's a number of things you can do, ranging from, simple implementation and cost to kind of high end. But the big ones, an employee survey, an XP survey, that's quite a beast to manage, but it's really important. Typically, they're done once or twice a year. And what's really important about it is the take action part. If you don't take action on results, you get more disengagement. So, an employee engagement survey is critical. Then introducing maybe pulse surveys, which is kind of smaller pulse surveys each quarter, and they can focus on particular topics like trust and culture. And then we can get into kind of proper team tools to look at data. We can use Five Behaviours to get some data around. Five Behaviours is a Patrick Lencioni model on what makes a high-performing team, and it looks at trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and results. So we can get some data around teams on that side of things. We can also do 360s. We can also put some performance tracking in there. So there's a whole suite of tools you can use to kind of benchmark and understand, how effective your talent strategy is and where you should focus.
Got it. Got it. And a good way to start is a team assimilation workshop. Can you elaborate a little bit more on how the team assimilation workshop can kickstart team development?
Yeah, I skipped that one, but we often combine that with an engagement survey or a Five Behaviours survey. So what Team Assimilation, we've designed it, it's kind of one of our flagship workshops. So we often start our engagements using some other data, but starting with this. And a Team Assimilation workshop is getting the team together, building an understanding of vulnerability-based trust to try and understand what builds high-performing team is that ability to trust each other, to share your ideas, share your concerns, because it's that silent disagreement which destroys teams. So what we do is we get that team in the room and we work through what a high-performance team is, and try and benchmark where the team is on that journey and try and build a plan to get them to where we want to go.
Got it. What are some of the immediate benefits that the teams and leaders can expect from participating in a team assimilation workshop?
Can you repeat that question for me?
Yeah, sure. What are some of the immediate benefits that teams and leaders can expect from participating in this workshop?
Yeah, so interestingly, when we get our clients in these workshops, there's always a sense of on a certain number of people who don't really want to be there, and funny enough, we can identify with their behavior who these people are at the beginning of the workshop. It's usually these high dominant, low formality and patient individuals. That's the technical behavioral term. They're hardwired to want to move quickly, want to get task oriented, want to get the job done. So we can often identify who's going to be a bit disengaged at first. But what we find is they quickly come around. Once we set that foundation of how, what makes a high performing team, and they understand that we're here to share, and quite often we'll say, hey, this is your moment. There's no point heading out and complaining. This is your moment to put everything you want across. And if you get the tone right, we often work with the leader to set the tone, and kind of to be quite vulnerable to begin with. Once we establish that, people start sharing and they feel kind of liberated. So that ability to express where they think they are as a team, and then talk about, previous teams they've been part of and what made them high performing, previous dysfunctional teams, people share. And, very quickly that momentum comes out and we find people that really quickly go from a couple not engaged to really engaged very quickly.
Awesome. So how about taking us through the approach?
Do you want me to share some slides here? I'm happy to do so.
That would be terrific.
Yeah. So, here we go. So we actually share this workshop resource, and I believe you're going to issue it at the end of this podcast or webinar. Obviously, having a third-party facilitator is very powerful because I can't get fired for asking difficult questions, and I'm an expert in doing this. So, but it is something you can do yourself. And this is our kind of, it's a great starting point. I mean, obviously doing the employee survey or doing 360s or doing data like that is awesome as well, but they're often a bit more expensive and take some time and energy. This is something quick any team can do. So all the notes are in the slide deck in the comments section. And so we're just quickly go through a quick icebreaker. We'll go through the workshop goal. We'll talk about what makes a high performing team. And then we're going to do some benchmarking and goal setting. And then last of all, we'll do some wrap up questions. This session normally takes about an hour, but sometimes the conversation gets really interesting. So you don't want to stifle it. So it can be quite fun.
You want to share your slides, or do you want me to do it for you? Do you have it?
Let me share them. 1 second. Let me do that. Bear with me. Let me find my Zoom. Share. Here we go. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. So here we go. So all the notes are in here. Feel free to adapt and change as appropriate. We have a whole collection of icebreakers, but this is one of my favorite. And it's so simple. And actually, in our feedback sometimes, this is one of the big ones. So we ask people to break out in pairs and discuss something you have in common. The more unusual, the better. Now, the best one I've had here is taxidermy. So please let me know if anyone beats that, because that's definitely the most unusual one. And it's quite quick fire because you have to talk to each other really quickly and share information. So this is one of my favorite icebreakers. So feel free to use your own. And what we're trying to do here is begin a leadership team development journey. We're going to benchmark where you are now, where you want to get to, and it's going to form the base to start generating a plan after. If you wanted, you could generate that plan in a workshop, or you could take it away. So first of all, we do some more interactions. We're trying to set the scene. We're trying to benchmark a dysfunctional team. We're trying to talk about what makes a great team. And this is going to build onto the next section. It's going to give people lots of ideas. We're going to start rethinking about good experiences, bad experiences, and it's going to kind of feed into this next section coming up. Most of my workshops have a sport analogy, and I apologize. I need to put some different ones in there, but feel free to take this out or remove it. But where we want to get to is we want the team to write down what they think a high-performing team is, whether it's a word or phrase. And we want to put that on a board. Now, if you get duplicates, great. We want the duplicates. We're just going to cluster them. So a bit of a facilitation tip here. I often ask someone to help me, prepare them to do a little bit of helping. You can get someone to cluster them for you, or you can cluster them, or you can ask a group to cluster them. And so we're looking at patterns. And typically what comes up is trust, communication. David, you can jump in here. What do you usually, I know you do some of this stuff. I mean, what topics do you normally get come out?
Yeah, trust, communication, alignment. Yeah, well, no, it depends on the team, but a lot of different answers. One of the things that we also do is we'll utilize predictive index at this stage, and we will take everybody's behavioral assessment and blow it up and anonymize it and put it on the wall, and use that as a starting point for a discussion like this.
I do, yeah. I keep on meaning to put these in an ebook or do something. I got about 10 little PI icebreakers, which are really good fun. And we can talk more about that later. I don't want to go off as a tangent because I got loads of fun games with Predictive Index. So what we're looking for is themes. And then we can add some. I mean, the point here, we're trying to establish that leadership development is a big deal. There's a lot of things we can do. And if we go back to what we discussed earlier, leadership development is often just, oh, it's an afterthought. Let's do something. That's not what it's about. So by doing this, it's given us a bit of a mind map of all the things we can do. And it's also given you an indication of what the team thinks is important. So we asked the team what jumps out. And quite often it's like, oh, trust is a big thing here, or communication, or alignment, or commitment, or accountability, or meeting management. There's all kinds of stuff in here. Then what I do is draw a line, number it 1 to 10, and ask a team where they think they are on this journey. Now, there's a few things to bear in mind here. First of all, if it's a new team, I would mention that it's understandable you're going to be low. It's a new team. You don't just magically become a high-performing team. So it's one thing to consider. Also, if you generally think you're dysfunctional, let's bring out vulnerability-based trust conversation into it. And this is the moment to do something about it. So typically teams are quite low. And that's not a bad thing. It's just where you are as a team. If it's like a gym membership, we may have a gym membership. It's great. If we're not in that gym using it, it's no good. And it's a bit like team development. Yeah. If we're not doing team development, our muscle's not going to be worked. So quite typically I see teams around 3 here. I don't see much higher than 3, 5. Then this moves us on to discussing with the team, what would be the impact if we can improve that score? And how could it impact? We can go really deep here. We can say, how does it impact this team? How can it impact the wider organization? How is it going to impact your personal life? How is it going to impact when you get home? So we can go quite deep here. And what we're trying to do is set the scene for that need to really be strategic and long-term on your team development. Any questions so far? Okay. So now what we're going to do, and this is where a lot of workshops fall short sometimes, or training, is the action planning. Yeah. So allowing lots of time to do this is really important. So what we ask them to do is split up into smaller points, prioritize 3 areas, each team to think about what they're going to prioritize, why you selected those areas, and what the impact would be. And then also, how do we measure success? Then we're going to bring those groups in. We're going to talk about it and kind of start taking all these ideas into a kind of final focus area. Then what we want to try and do is kind of build. Now we've got some priority areas. We want to try and think, well, what do we want the organization to think of us in the future? This is a Jim Collins term. It's a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And usually it's a term described to use business goals, but I've used it to apply to a team goal here, What do we want the organization to think of us? Look up to this team to be. And I want to put that in something measurable with a definition of done. I really want that team to think, okay, this is how we want to be perceived. Now, in doing so, we want a few things to feed into this. In particular, we want the team's values, mission, vision, values to be kind of part of that, because it's really important. I typically find out that the leadership team struggle putting their values down in this session, which can lead on to a whole separate rabbit hole. Yeah. I mean, as a kind of leadership and team development consultant, the leadership team should be evangelizing these values. They should be like thought leadership around them. They should be encouraging them. We should be hiring on them. We should be doing performance reviews on them. So this can lead to a whole separate conversation. But we want to try, the point of this is that we want to embrace mission, vision, values when we think about what we look up to the leadership to be. Then, we're going to mold that vision of where we want to get to. So we've got 2 things here. We've got what we know we need to work on and where we want to get to. And we're just going to kind of mold that together. And you got a choice here now. We can either kind of spend extra time making sure that statement where you want to get to is really wordsmithed. And then we can start building the talent plan. We can start building, okay, we're going to do quarterly workshops, half a day. We're going to do a 2-day offsite. We're going to focus here. We're going to focus here. We're going to focus there. or you can take it away and maybe you got a learning and development or an HR lead who can work on that for you. And that's it. There's some tips and tricks at the end. Obviously, we use a lot of Predictive Index and Five Behaviours to kind of help enrich that data with more information. This deck we're going to send out. I think people are going to drop you an email and you can send it out. And we are just happy to share that because we're excited about building teams. And if that's going to help anyone do it, it's a great resource and a great place to start.
Terrific. Thank you. Where do you see the follow-up from this workshop going, Damon?
As in terms of follow-up as for team, correct? Yeah, so this is another talking point, and we could do a whole section on this. That's where these things usually break down. It's how do you do the follow-up and being committed? Because what happens is tactical day stuff just gets involved. And the difference between these organizations you see that thrive and crush it are the ones that maintain their strategic focus, and that includes a training plan. So there's a number of things you can do there. You can have performance tracking software, which is a big growth area and another topic we can chat about. But what I try and do is get commitments and make sure in that session I have action plans. I know my next step. I know who I'm going to meet. And transparency, that was where I failed many years ago, was that I'd go and do a great workshop, feedback was amazing. And then as a consultant, I'd leave and then things wouldn't get done. So now I'm very disciplined, and whether you're doing this internally or your consultants, it's getting an action plan, getting that definition of done. What is complete looks like? When's the date? When am I going to check in? And that's the piece where I'm very disciplined on now of making sure it gets executed.
Got it. Got it. Going back to Predictive Index, which, we've been working with you on for a while. Can you share a little bit more on how PI contributes to team development and alignment with organizational strategy?
Yeah, so once that organizational strategy is there, so that's the first part. My job's mainly is to build that talent plan to execute that strategy. So there should be a very kind of robust methodology to develop, implement, and track that strategy. Once that's in place, our job is to start off being strategic and building a talent plan. Now, where a predictive index comes in is it checks a lot of my boxes. So if I think about employee engagement, if I think about leadership development, if I think about organizational development, PI kind of checks all those boxes. So, with PI, I can support teams through change. I can identify change agents. I can identify people who are uncomfortable with change. I can do manager training. I can do, conflicts resolution. I can do team alignment to strategy. I can put the right people in the right seats. I can measure engagement. I can do pulse surveys. So for me, Predictive Index, although it doesn't encapsulate all of talent strategy, I think it's the tool out there that does the most and most efficiently. So that's how typically we start. We use the data, when we often use Predictive Index as our main tool to really solve some of those challenges.
How about tell us a success story where Predictive Index played a crucial role in transforming a team or an organization?
So often we're brought in because there's dysfunction, and it's very quick to unpick why there's dysfunction. It's normally behavior. Normally we've got high dominant individuals pushing forward who are comfort with ambiguity, and we've got, other behaviorally hardwired people who want detail, they want information, they want to reflect on ideas, and it causes that conflict. But one in particular I worked with, we had a situation where we were pulled in because there was some leadership who were basically there's a lot of conflict with, and two in particular. And we just went through, it was the basic session of just looking at your natural hardwiring, looking at your strengths, how to use them more, in your day-to-day, outside your day-to-day, and progress towards them in the future. Looking at your caution areas and how they impact others. And also looking at contrasting styles and where friction comes from and how perhaps you can turn that into a strength. So we went through our standard Introduction to Behaviour workshop. And the two individuals who were clashing actually ended up in the bar all night till the early hours of the morning, and realized that they were clashing because of their natural hardwiring. It wasn't personal. So sometimes when you have these discussions, it's not awkward. You're not saying, Bob annoys me. You're saying, oh, guardians are frustrating because they want to know all the detail and I don't like the detail. So what happened is they turned up the next day. I wasn't in the next day. And they were in charge of two different business units. And they kind of complemented each other and had to work with each other occasionally. And they said to the CEO, we want to merge our business units because we've just realized that leader A is really good at this stuff and I'm really bad at that. And I'm really good at stuff and he's really bad at that. So they decided that rather than having two different business units, they should join. And there's a lot of economies of scale, and they felt that they could work better. It was a better reorganization. So we turned coming in to talk about friction and trying to get two leaders to gel better to the next day waking up and going, oh, we want to work together every day. So I can't think of a better use case scenario. And I've got countless more as well.
Shifting gears a little bit. At YOL, as you know, we're focused on building connected and compassionate workplaces through holistic well-being and human-centered leadership. What role does talent optimization play in building connected and compassionate workplaces? Or what role can it play?
Yeah, so human behaviors for starting point. This is a bit, as long as the journeys, there's lots of things we can do. And for me, as long as the journey is committed, it's planned out, it's strategic, and we're investing in our people, we're going back to that better work, better world scenario, which is actually Predictive Index mission, which I'm so happy about. But it all starts with understanding each other. If we can understand ourselves, actually, there's a Harvard study that says 95% of people think they have self-awareness, but in fact, only 5% do. Yeah. And if we can start understanding ourselves better and how it impacts others, it starts at mission. And I think it starts with understanding yourself and your impact on others. And I think PI does that wonderfully.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. How can leaders foster a culture of empathy and connection within their teams?
Values. So it's one of these things that particularly more traditional leaders struggle with, like going back and not just defining your values, but embracing them, hiring on them, doing your performance review on them, marketing them. I think it starts there. And it's so too often missed and people don't get it. It's really important. And if a leadership can embrace them and demonstrate them, the impact is crazy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We found that as well. And one thing is often overlooked by many leaders is they don't know how to align their values with their leadership style, which is one of the things that Zanette, our director of learning, teaches as part of our Courage curriculum. But yeah, no, it's very, very cool stuff. Some questions from the participants. In your experience, what are the most current reasons leadership and team development initiatives fail?
I think we touched on a few of these, but two things. Not having that strategic mindset and letting tactical day-to-day get in the way. As I said, the companies that thrive are the ones that do not lose sight of a more strategic focus. And secondly, performance management. So we struggled with this for a long time. How do we teach this stuff and how does it not go into a drawer of a desk and never get used? And now Predictive Index have launched something called PI Perform, which is an additional module, which is game changing. It basically enables you to, whether it's project goals or company goals, it enables you to put them into the software, track them in terms of employee reviews at a very granular level. It also pulls in predictive index data. So, your meetings are more productive because you're understanding the behavior. And it enables you to track these initiatives. So when we introduce a team development or talent strategy to a company strategy and it's a core goal, we can actually implement that and track it and make sure those meetings are happening, making sure the action plans are actually executed, because we can actually track it in the software and roll it up to a dashboard. So that's a total game changer. And I think all businesses should seriously be thinking about having performance tracking software. It's going to give people a big competitive advantage.
Related question, how can you or can you share an example of a failed initiative and what could have been done differently?
A failed initiative. I'm going to lean on the last example for this. So many times, we finish that workshop, and this is why I do these workshops. You finish them and you're on a massive high. It's like, it's a strange analogy, but the buzz, I imagine, would be like being a rock star there, and everyone's been happy with the performance, because it's like an addiction. I love doing these workshops, and I've been doing them for 20 odd years now. And particularly in the early days when there wasn't performance tracking in place, or there wasn't so much focus on action planning, a lot of them crashed and burned. It just became another, that's why people don't like doing, these sessions, because they don't get sustained and implemented. So yeah, I'm going to go back to, not all my programs were a failure, but I definitely had a couple which just the momentum was lost and the stickiness was lost, and it just became an opportunity missed. But that's no longer an excuse anymore, because we have all the tools to prevent that from happening.
What emerging trends do you see in the field of team development and talent management? And a related question, how can organizations stay ahead of those trends to ensure that they continue to build high-performing teams?
So I actually did a little study on this, comparing the HR development market to the marketing tech industry, and we saw a massive explosion in the marketing tech industry, and the HR tech industry isn't far behind it. So in terms of emerging trends, I think you're going to see a lot of more embedded learning and development programs. So for example, as I said earlier, with PI Perform, the behavioral data is pulled into the meeting management software. So you're just going to have a more productive, engaged discussion, because you're speaking to someone and you know what information, but you're going to know how they make decisions. You're going to know how they handle risk. You're going to know how they prefer to be communicated to. So I think in emerging trends, it's going to be better tech enabling talent performance. We're also going to see behavioral data being used better. For example, we did a pilot where we took this is for a very large organization. We took one region, we took a sample size of 250 performers, and we looked at their behavioral data and success metrics, and we analyzed if we could actually use behavioral data to put the right people in the right seats. And we chose for behavioral data which was more successful, because their hardwiring suited that job more. We would turn a 2 million loss into a 40 million gain. And that was just by analyzing success metrics with behavioral data. And that is just simply incredible. So I think we're going to see a lot more work in basically analyzing success metrics and behavioral data. And the last part of that question, I can't remember.
The last part of the question was, how can organizations stay ahead of the trends to ensure that they continue to build high-performing teams?
So that's our job. So I mean, the example is, you sent me an article last week, and I think it was a Gartner report on CHROs, maybe. So I mean, our job is to digest, soak up that information. So I have half a day a week, and I have things up here already I need to read, to actually, that's my job, to stay on top of that, because my clients, it's tough out there. So, their job is to get that job done. So that's where I think you need to lean on consultants such as you and I to help kind of support.
And drawing from your experience, Damon, your wide-ranging experience leading cross-functional teams in multinational tech companies across continents, what unique challenges do global teams face, and how can talent optimization help them with these challenges?
It's an expansive answer. Um, yeah, I'm kind of laboring a point here, but if you want more engaged teams and you want better retention, um, unfortunately, it's something which is deprioritized sometimes. And if you can focus on building more engagement, actually being more strategic and implementing talent strategies, you're going to get more productive workers. You're going to get less retention, or better retention, should I say? And you're going to do what I do, and that's I go home at night and put my head on the pillow, and I'm happy because I'm making a difference. And this is quite personal for me, and this is why I do what I do, and this generates our values. I was one of those people, like many were doing those jobs for years, which behaviorally I wasn't hardwired to do. Now I got the job done, but how did I do it? I did it by working long hours. I did it by being stressed. I didn't know I was making mistakes, but not understanding why. So if we can use behavioral data to put the right people in the right seats, if we can support with teams with better communication, if we can align teams to strategy, if we can do engagement surveys and identify where we can help teams, I think we're going to create a better world. And that's why I do what I do. And if I can help other people do that, then I feel I'm making a difference.
Thank you. That was enlightening. For anyone who would like a copy of this session, and as Damon mentioned, the team assimilation slides that he went through earlier, or to learn more about YOL or talent optimizers, you can reach out to us at info@experienceyol.com. That's info@experienceyol.com, or just reach out to me, David@experienceyol.com, or to Damon at dclark@talent-optimizers.com. We'd love to hear from you. So anyway, thank you again, Damon. We really appreciate your being here, and happy weekend, everybody. See you soon.
Take care. Thank you for having me.